Hey guys, it's me again. Today I'm coming to you from the countryside of right outside the school where I work. There are students in classes right now and the rooms are cold, and this is actually nicer out here than it is in there. Out here it's actually 5 degrees and it's not so bad. It feels kind of nice if I don't think about it too much. But that's not why I'm out here today. The reason I'm out here today is to talk about black and white photography and is it a mental illness? I know that sounds a little bit like clickbait, but hear me out. When we started photography 20 years ago or 30, 40, 50 years ago, everything was in black and white. You didn't have the option of color. It was new technology, everyone loved it, and these photos that people were producing were fantastic. And even some of those oldest photos, at least as far back as Ansel Adams, are widely printed and put on people's walls still. They're beautiful. But eventually, color photography came around. Color photography is what we see in the real world, what we see around us. You can turn the photos into black and white, and you can even shoot in black and white for most cameras. I know that mine can, but we don't default to that because the world that we see is in color. So my question is, why do we continue to shoot in black and white? And is it, I don't know, is it a form of nostalgia? Are we in need of therapy because we don't want to change, basically? So here's where I'm coming from. I took high school photography, but what we did in that class was black and white photography, and we developed it and we stirred it and all this other stuff because that was easier. The temperature changes when you were developing color film were just too difficult to handle. So we did black and white film, and I imagine most other high school photography classes did the same thing. We printed and we hung them up on we were really proud of ourselves. It was a seminal moment for me in, what I considered myself to be, the kind of person that I was. I took black and white photos. And then later on, of course, when I was traveling around, I took color photos, and I would only use black and white when I knew I was going to be shooting in low light conditions and I wanted to use the higher speed film. I would shoot with black and white because I knew it would be grainier and I didn't like the color when it was really grainy. I, grew up and I got digital cameras and everything, and I started shooting in color like most people, but there were times that I looked back on my youth and I said, I want to shoot black and white photography because it was a nostalgic thing. The question that I have is this nostalgia healthy? Is it normal? And is it something that I have to throw away if I really want to continue doing black and white photography? I'm not the sort of person who likes to make sepia tone photos or put little old burned, ripped frames around my photos. But the black and white idea is still kind of the same thing. We all come from the place where we were when we were teenagers. If you're in your 30s or your 40s or even your 50s, you begin to see those things, those seminal, I use that word twice now in one video, those years as special. They become somehow more and more special as time goes on. As an example of this, in my music choices, it is absolutely sticky with the mousse and the gel of hair bands from the late 80s. Whitesnake and Rat and Bon Jovi and Skid Row and Twisted Sister and all of these other hair bands. I acknowledge freely that, the image of those guys are silly, but I love the music. Even though I know the lyrics are so stupid sometimes, I still love the music. My point is I stick to that time period because it's what I heard when I was that age, when I was a teenager. Am I doing the same thing with black and white photography, and is it holding me back? Am I not outgrowing it? I don't think that I'm suffering some kind of trauma that I need to go to therapy for, that I've lost something that I can't regain, that but I do genuinely ask the question, is this attachment to the past a hindrance? Hold on, guys. If I want to use black and white as a photographic medium, I need to have certain criteria for it, I guess, that don't rely on because it looks like it did when I was shooting in high school. What are those criteria? I guess subject matter. If the subject matter is diminished by all the color in there, maybe the color is too busy and you can't focus on the subject, okay, I can see that. Line and shape. Okay, if there are a lot of cool lines in an image, I guess that would make sense too, that I would want to perhaps consider black and white. The lines lead you places and they look like geometric shapes. So maybe landscape photography, no, not landscape, architectural photography maybe would be more suited or better suited to the black and white treatment. I guess texture. I've always noticed that black and white textures look amazing. In a color photo, you pay attention to the colors. If there's a bright orange or some bright red, I guess you focus on that and you don't pay attention as much to some of the other things. Especially if you're on Instagram or Flickr or Vero or whatever those platforms are. You kind of just scroll, right? And whatever catches your eye is what people focus on, what they look at for any extended period. And color is usually that. For black and white, I guess it's texture, right? Texture, and then composition is probably another factor that isn't related to nostalgia. But I don't actually focus on those things. I don't actually focus on those when I'm taking the shot. When I'm taking black and white photos, I'm going out to simply take black and white photos. Possible problems that I have with shooting in only black and white is the idea that a painter only painting with two colors or a musician only playing one style of music. No, actually, now that I say it like that, I was going to say it's a bad thing, but most painters paint with a certain style. They paint either watercolor or oil paint, or they do, I don't know, pencil sketch or ink sketch or digital animation. They all kind of specialize in one thing. I was going to say that shows a certain, I don't know, limitation, but I actually think maybe I'm wrong. Okay. Well, there we go. That argument is down. Okay. Yeah, so shooting in black and white, I have no problem with it if a person shoots nothing but black and white. No problem with that at all now. Cool. But what else is there that would hold me back from shooting in black and white? Now that I've thought about it, I don't have any problems with black and white photography so long as you don't get stuck in the past and you don't try to reproduce something from the past, unless you're making a social statement. I'm fine with that too. I guess I keep saying there are all these things that you shouldn't do about nostalgia, but then I keep coming up with all these reasons that you could do it. But then again, satirizing or making a social statement about the past is not necessarily nostalgia. If you focus on the basics and you limit yourself to express something greater, then I guess in some ways black and white photography is harder, but could also be more rewarding because it's like poetry. Maybe black and white photography is like poetry and color photography is like fiction or prose. Speaking of prose, that leads me to our sponsor today. Our sponsor is me. Hold on, I'll show you. Okay, this is my book, The Tangents of 22. They're a collection of short stories that I wrote last year and put into form for people to read this year. Everybody else has a sponsor. I don't see why I can't have one. It's a bunch of mostly what you would consider fairy tale / science fiction / fantasy-esque stories with one nostalgia piece in there from the 80s. That's funny actually, now that I think about it. But anyway, it's a great read. All my friends and family tell me it is. So if you have the opportunity and you'd like to read a story or two, I highly recommend The Tangents of 22. I'll leave the link down below, and you guys, I hope, will pick up a copy or two or three or four. Tell your friends about it. Give it a try. So I like it. I was worried before that I was only shooting black and white for nostalgia's sake. And I have some photos that are like that. I'm pretty sure that there are a few that just simply look old because I wanted them to look like I was capturing something from the 50s or the 60s or the 70s or something. And I want to try to avoid that, I think, from now on. I will try to be a little bit more intentional with my black and white photography. Intentional, that's a good word. You guys let me know what you think, whether or not black and white photography is just refusing to move out of the past, or if it is a legitimate photographic avenue. Thanks again for joining me, and I hope to see you guys next week. Bye.